So while I was doing some more potting up, which is a continuation from my video yesterday, and these are Achillea fruit bowl. They're called flower burst fruit bowl. And if you think they look a bit withered here, it's because it took me so long. I had so many to plant up. By the time I was getting to these last ones, they'd kind of been out the pot for a while, and they were getting a bit tired, I think. So, but actually, the germination on the seed is amazing. Anyhow, today's video is about a potting up station. Now, this is my potting up station today during a big planting session, so it's a big fat mess. But it's important to see this because this means that my potting up station is a success. I am using it and I'm making a mess, and it's just really handy that it's here in the garden. And it's kind of, I like to have it, all the inner workings of the garden available to me. Otherwise, I just won't use it. I had a potting station. In fact, the top of my potting station, the top with the metal liner, that was from an oldie potting up station that I bought from Aldi several years ago, and I had that out in the driveway, and I never used it because I have a psychological block. The driveway to me is just not the garden. It's a practical area. It's got all my tools in the garage, and it's just a place I'd rather avoid. It's also, you can hear the road more from there. I'd just rather avoid it. And there is also a gate to go through there, and I don't want my dogs coming through the gate. So there's all sorts of just small psychological hurdles that I have to go through when I want to use my potting up station on the drive. And so what I was doing was procrastinating and not using it at all. I was dragging compost over the lawn. I was potting up on the terrace, on the patio. There was compost everywhere. I was making more mess than I was gaining anything of beauty. So what I realized when I was doing my landscaping, when I was sitting and thinking, how can I just make this garden work for me? Because that's what you want to do. So it's all about your own personality and your own preferences. So for me, it has to be handy. Otherwise, it becomes such a huge mental block. I won't do it. So I knew I needed a potting station in the actual garden, in a place where I was actually going to use it. So that would be my first tip. If you're going to have a potting station, put it somewhere you are actually going to use it. It's not going to be a huge, big mental task to, oh, I've got to pot up today. I can be out in the garden and, I might as well be potting up as just sitting around having a cup of coffee because it's in a nice area. So it doesn't feel like a chore anymore to do the potting up. So that's my number one thing, is put it somewhere where you actually will go and use it. Number two, it doesn't have to be expensive or anything at all. So you can see it's an old pub bench that I bought from B&Q years ago. It was rotting down the garden. I've bought that out and I've put the top, I detached the top of the oldie potting up table, and I just put that on top. Because it's a bench, I took out the front seating area so that I could stand close to the potting up table, but I left the seating bench on the back of the potting up table so that I can line that with pots. So it has all pots lined at the back. In fact, it has far too many, and they're all a big jumble again now, so I've got to sort that out. So, but I've found fault with it. So, two faults with that. And these are things that you need to think about when you build yours. And if I ever improve mine or build it again, I will, factor in these errors. Because I've been using it about a year now. So I've picked up a couple of errors, a couple of things I could have done better. So the sighting is perfect. That was the one thing I thought of from having a potting area before that didn't work. So I moved it. Great. Second thing for me is that pub bench is too low. That pub bench is meant for sitting at and sort of leaning your elbows on, having a pint of beer or a meal. And it's not really meant for potting up. So for me, I'm quite tall. It actually does my back in. It's not the right height at all. And I suppose I could just raise the level by putting something, maybe some more wood to raise the level of it. But that's something you need to think about. What's good for your back when you're potting up? You don't want to be hunching over your potting table. The other thing is that I do big quantities of mixture. So mine is too narrow. The depth to the edge of the table is too narrow. So all the soil falls off. It falls over the back. It falls down the front. And it's just when I'm trying to mix it all up, I'm losing quite a lot as I'm mixing it up. Now, this would not be an issue if I was just potting up 1 or 2 plants a week, or something like that. But because I'm potting up lots of seedlings, I don't want to be mixing only enough compost for a couple of pots and then I have to mix some more compost for another couple of pots. I want to be able to mix a lot, and it doesn't really accommodate that. And if you compare it obviously to the Great Dixter one, and now obviously my garden isn't as big as Great Dixter, but I'm thinking there's something probably in between size wise that I could do with. I definitely need more depth to stop it falling off onto the floor. Now, on the note of the soil falling out of the front of your potting dish, mixing platform, whatever you call them, I noticed that turned to a bog over the winter with all the rain that I've mentioned in so many of my videos. It turned into a bog, and so I have now kept a couple of compost bags. I keep a couple of compost bags handy, and I just do put that down on the ground. I could gravel it over, but then I think the soil will fall into the gravel. I do prefer the bark chippings, because if the compost falls into the bark chippings, you don't notice it. But obviously if enough falls in and then it's rain and the bark chipping starts to disintegrate, you just get a bog. So a happy medium is I've re-topped it up with new bark chippings, and now when I do a big sort of potting up session, I just lay down a couple of compost bags, and it also helps me collect the compost, like you do with glitter when you're doing glitter projects with your kids, and you put it on card and then you fold it back and put it back into the bottle of glitter. A bit like that with compost. So protect the floor around. Think about the floor, below your potting bench, I guess, in short, is what I'm saying. So what have we done? Position, the size of the potting bench, the height of the potting bench, the ground beneath the potting bench. What do you need that to? How do you need that to work for you? And I guess my final one would be some kind of cover. So I really enjoyed potting up some of my summer plants in the rain outside, because I had a gazebo and a sail. But I just came out to do some potting up, finally to do some actual gardening, when a thunderstorm and some rain set in. And when I was buying this set, I forgot to mention that I bought this sail for £3, because again, clearance at this time of year from a store we have in the UK called B&M. I thought, since I don't sit down there, I'm just going to put it over here, over my potting desk. And so here I am in the dry, potting up my Sweet William. I cannot be, look at all my bulbs as well. I tell you, I couldn't be more happy with this potting up area. I love it. And the gazebo went over the seating area, and then the sail kind of stretched across over my potting bench. Well, and I was potting out in a thunderstorm. It was a distant thunderstorm, but nevertheless, I was able to pot out in lovely, soft summer rain with a thunderstorm rumbling in the background. And it just, for me, was quite magical to be able to crack on with jobs, even though it was raining. Now, you may have your potting up area in your greenhouse or your shed, so you don't have to think about covering. Now, I'm going to put in at some point in the future, as soon as I can, as soon as I've got time, I'm planning on putting in a more permanent pergola with a living roof. But in the short term, I do have a gazebo and a sail that I can set up at a moment's notice. As the summer gets nicer, I can just set that up, and then I can just pot up whatever the weather. It's going to be warm and I'm going to be dry. So that's really it, potting bench. I definitely recommend you have one. It really feels like you are a proper gardener if you have a proper potting bench with all your pots behind and your compost mixes and everything, and all your tools for mixing compost. It just feels so much more, and it's so much more fluid as well, rather than having to go somewhere else for a special job to do your potting up. So I like it all as part, as a feature of the garden. Mine definitely needs tidying up, but it's not going to get properly tidied up probably till the end of this week. But anyway, there you are. If you want to build a potting bench, first of all, I really recommend it. And second of all, just make sure you think about those factors before you go spending any money or, spending a lot of time building something that might not work for you. All right, I hope this helped. Thanks for watching. See you again in my next video. Bye.